Hey everybody, welcome back to another film of the week. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Man, I just been shooting a bunch of film of the weeks, just all in one week, really. So this is like the third one, I think. Well, this is the first one this week that I filmed. I shot like two of them yesterday or last week. Sorry, I just had a rough sleep yesterday. So excuse me if I just seem a little just, you know what I mean. But yeah, we're back with another film of the week, and this week we are, before we of course enter October, which is going to be of course dedicated to horror. So with all that being occupied, I figured now is the best time to discuss this film, because also coming in October, Joker, Folie à Deux, the sequel to Joker, is set to be released in October, and I will be checking that out. I'm curious enough to see it. Not been hearing great things, but curious enough to see it. So I figured, as a precursor, or just some understandings of or I guess just to reflect on the original film, I figured just to review the original film in anticipation for the follow-up. So we're gonna do that today. So we're gonna be discussing Joker, which was directed and written by Todd Phillips. Todd Phillips, notably directing a few comedies here and there, specifically that of the Hangover trilogy, and then most recently a film called War Dogs, which had Jonah Hill and Miles Teller. This stars Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck, who works on the streets as a kind of like a clown for hire. He just kind of does like little advertisements and tricks here and there, and we start the film off with a sequence kind of demonstrating that of his societal image. He's in his own world, and then reality comes along and really just really puts him down, in this case in a quite literal sense. And throughout the film we learn a lot about his psychosis and a lot about how he views the world, and a lot of the issues that plague his existence, specifically that of his of some disorders where he has this I forgot the issues, but the disorder is called, but when someone laughs and they're not laughing intentionally, it's just something that kind of comes out of them, and he's taking care of his mother, who is also who seems rather ill, and as time goes on, Arthur begins to see things and view things in a specific way, and at one point takes out his frustrations on a group of people in a subway who begin to torment him, and he enacts an act of violence, and that pretty much unravels and pits him in a place of dissent, insanity, and ultimately drives him to become something that is more monstrous than is expected, and is becoming that of what we would know as the Joker. So this is an interesting, for what superhero films offer, it's an interesting pitch, because usually with films in this genre, it's usually like big, big pieces with high budgets and interconnecting storylines. And I think that the first thing to mention with Joker is that it owes a debt to Logan, that I think really paved the way for a film like this to exist, because similar to the vein of how Deadpool gave way to Logan, I think that Joker owes a bit of a thanks to Logan existing, because it proved that you can do films or do stories, singular stories, self-contained character studies within this genre, and not have to rely upon spectacles and other types of shenanigans. So it's good to see that films like this are existing now in this genre, and that are still continuing to exist in this genre. And to speak positively, I mean, there are notable things about it, specifically that of Joaquin Phoenix's performance, which I think is very good. I don't think of it to be outstanding as much as some other people do. I don't think that it was Oscar worthy, in my opinion. I mean, the Oscars are always just full of shit. It's a popularity contest, but yeah, I mean, the physical nature of that performance is rather interesting. I think that it does give us a layer of context and understanding to that character on the outside, because a lot of the time it's on the inside of that character, and then on the outside is a lot to do with the physical nature of that performance and what Joaquin did to get himself into that, to kind of illustrate Arthur Fleck on, like I said, on the outside, and whereas the Todd Phillips is doing the work on the inside, and also Joaquin. But it's to say that the physical elements are not just there for flattery, like, oh wow, he lost all that weight. It does service the character to some extent. I think that just by framing, or not by framing, by tint, by just overall look of frame, I think that it's an interesting film to look at. The commentary that is there is fair enough, and in the delivery of it, I think that it gets the job done, I guess you could say. Where we start to take issues with it, because as you can notice that I kind of can pick out a few things, but it's kind of nitpicking, because I do take issues with Joker, specifically that in structure, which I think is rather messy. And it's not to say that the information that it holds, or the shielding of that information, I take issue with. It's just quite literally in the construction of the film, in the editing, in the pacing. I just think that it just isn't well polished, and I feel that it does diminish the overall delivery in like twist and in actual information. With the unraveling, I guess you could say, within the viewer, when they come to understand that Arthur is not exactly a reliable narrator, it just doesn't impact as much because of just how it is managed in terms of the overall edit, the overall just cut that is there. It just is rather, I wouldn't say chaotic, but it just doesn't possess a flow that builds. It just feels rather bumpy in the overall craftsmanship, and I think that really diminishes the film. And it's unfortunate how much it impacts it, really, because I watched the film 3 separate times. I first saw it 2 times in theaters. I saw it once by myself, and then another time with friends, and then the third time I saw it with my mom actually. And I had 3 different responses, and the third time I actually found a balance in my feeling about the film. First time I watched it, I was very I wasn't thrilled by it, and then the second time I watched it, I found more positives than I did negatives. And then the third time I watched it, I actually was able to find that balance in how I felt, in that there are things about it that are interesting, in that a film like this existing in this genre, I think, is noteworthy, and I want more films like this to exist. I mean, I would welcome that very much. And with Joaquin Phoenix, what he is bringing in performance, it is noteworthy and interesting what he is doing in, like, just specific scenes, like just with him in that bathroom, and that odd dance that he does. And I wouldn't say the allegorical, but kind of the, like, there's some language there that is interpretive, that is interesting, and does give an audience a chance to find answers for the character, not necessarily giving them the whole meal of what that character is. Stuff like that is interesting. I do think, though, that because we've discussed this also in a news roundup, where Joaquin Phoenix's involvement in these films is questionable, but also rather destructive. Because I do believe that the flaw with Joker, it is a lot to do with how it was made. Just in origin, how it was made. I just feel that in getting that to the editing, getting that into post-production, it creates something that is just not as well managed, and it doesn't have a flow of energy or a build that feels rewarding. There's just always something to the filmmaking that feels incomplete, or feels something, or there's a distance that is always felt within the filmmaking and the surrounding elements, or the elements that they wish to unveil to you. It just doesn't feel like it's really giving you that big punch, and it's not to say that it's predictable either. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I think that there are moments that definitely would promote like that, oh my god, I can't believe that, like WTF moments, especially when it comes to Zazie Beetz' character. Like I think that that's well, like in writing, I think that that's well established or well built, but in the visual nature of the presentation, the flow of it just doesn't land as much. So I think that the flaws of Joker are the people behind it, and I think that it just makes for a story that is interesting, but in the storytelling, it just is rather it's rather questionable, I guess you could say. So I don't hate it. I don't. I think that there are interesting elements there, and I'm curious to see how the sequel, because the sequel has a very similar production, as we've illustrated on the news roundup, has a very, very similar production. So I'm curious if that same aura, that incomplete type of feeling, I'm curious if Folie à Deux is going to have that, or if that's even amplified more by the fact that it's a sequel and it just feels highly unnecessary on its own. But that's left to be seen. But as for this film, for what it is, I think that it's problematic. And I think that those problems, unfortunately, outweigh anything that might be intriguing. Mainly that with Joaquin, and with by framework, by that is also interesting. Obviously, it's taking notes from that of Martin Scorsese, specifically that of Taxi Driver. I wouldn't say as much of King of Comedy. I can see, where that influence is coming from, but I think primarily speaking, I mean the opposite. Sorry, I got those two films just mixed up. It actually has more to do with King of Comedy than it does with Taxi Driver, because I know people bring that up, but I think that that's kind of a loose connection, because Travis Bickle and Arthur Fleck, I think, are very different characters, very, very different characters, and their motivations are extremely different as well. So I think it has a lot more to do with King of Comedy than it does with Taxi Driver. I mean, Robert De Niro's appearance in the film also kind of amplifies that feeling. But yeah, I definitely take issues with it, and I don't think that it's. Firstly, I don't think that the film promotes violence. I think that narrative that was built in the release of the film, I think, was just ludicrous. It does not promote violence. It does not. I don't think that it's gritty. I don't think that it's powerful. I don't think that it has a lot going on for it. I think that what is there, with Joaquin's performance and by the framing of it, I think that there are interesting little elements to raise the film to something that of mediocrity. But without those elements, I feel that what you get is something in literal technicality in how it is built, how it is crafted, by the edit, by the pacing, by the structure. It's problematic, and I think that honestly that's the best word to describe Joker for me. It's just problematic, and I fear that Folie à Deux is probably going to be writing that same mentality, or writing that same feeling for me, or perhaps even worse. Who knows? But as it stands, there are issues, and those issues outweigh any positives that I may take with the film. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Joker. It's okay. It's not great. There are, like I said, some good elements there, but ultimately the stuff that I take issues with, those outweigh the positives for me. And yeah, I don't view it as anything of a stroke. I mean, it's a little bit. It takes a little bit of pleasure in the influence of that of Martin Scorsese. It's a little self-indulgent in that respect, also, but in that the identity of the filmmaking can be a bit like imposter-like syndrome. I don't take issue with that too much, but I can recognize that as a flaw as well. But generally speaking, I think it's okay. And by my 3 viewings of it, it definitely like degraded, it kind of fell, in those 3 viewings, and I eventually settled with how I feel now. But yeah, it definitely is. It definitely has its flaws, and it cannot escape that. It just cannot for me. So, but those are my thoughts on Joker. You guys let me know your thoughts on Joker if you guys have seen it. Of course, if you have seen Folie à Deux, I don't know if anyone has seen it yet, but if you have seen it, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and your thoughts on Todd Phillips as a filmmaker, Joaquin Phoenix. I do not agree with how he manages, how he partakes in these productions. I feel that it really damages the films that he's making, but that's just my opinion. But you guys know all your thoughts in the comment section below, and that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and until then, I will catch you guys in the next video.